My daughter said I was ruining her marriage, so I left and took the deed with me. The pot on the stove was bubbling gently, and the smell of roasted garlic and chicken broth filled the small suburban kitchen. I stirred the soup with my left hand, my right wrist still wrapped in a brace from the fall I'd taken on the ice a few weeks ago. My balance wasn't what it used to be, nothing was. But I could still cook, I could still help. Or so I thought. Ellie stood near the counter, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in that way she used to do when she was a teenager and didn't get her way. But now she was 33, married, a mother herself, and the look in her eyes wasn't frustration, it was something colder, final. "You know what, Mom?" she said sharply. "You can just go. I can't afford to take care of you. You're a burden. I'm done." I stopped stirring. My heart thudded, slow and deep. She wasn't finished. "Please, just let me live my life. Let me breathe. I'm not your child anymore, and I don't owe you everything. I can't be your retirement plan." The words landed like stones. I turned to face her. "Ellie," I said quietly, "what are you talking about? I'm not asking you to take care of me. I've been trying to help." "That's the problem," she snapped. "You're always helping, always giving your opinion, rearranging the kitchen, correcting the way I talk to Noah. You act like this is still your house, but it's not. This is my home, my marriage, and you're ruining it." She didn't shout the last part, but it hit me harder than any raised voice ever could. "You're ruining my marriage." Behind her, Jake walked in from the garage, setting his keys down on the counter like nothing was happening. He glanced at us, sensed the tension, and opened a beer without a word. I looked at him, hoping he'd say something, defend me, diffuse this. He didn't. He took a sip, turned, and left the room. I didn't know what hurt more, Ellie's words or Jake's silence. I turned off the burner and set the spoon down, my hand trembling slightly. I thought of all the times I'd held her through the night when she had the flu, all the scraped knees I'd kissed, the school lunches I packed, the times I'd gone without so she could have new shoes or braces or summer camp. When her father died, just like that, no warning, heart attack at 42, I'd promised myself I'd raise her strong and safe. I took night shifts cleaning offices, day shifts at the local diner, and even did hair in our garage on weekends. I never remarried. I didn't want to risk bringing in someone who'd hurt her. She was my entire world, and now she was telling me to get out of hers. I moved in just 6 weeks ago, after the fall. The doctor said it would take at least 2 months for my wrist to heal. Ellie said, "Of course, Mom. Come stay with us. We'll take care of you." I'd been grateful, so grateful, but I didn't want to be a burden. I tried to pull my weight. I did the cooking, the laundry, picked up after Noah, paid the electric bill last month when Jake forgot and the shutoff notice came. I never complained. Jake didn't like me much. I saw it early on. He was polite when we first met, back when he was dating Ellie, but after the wedding, that changed. He had a way of looking through me, like I was part of the furniture. He never shouted, never cursed, but there was an undercurrent in his tone that made me feel unwelcome. Ellie used to defend me, but slowly she started mimicking him. Little things. "Mom, I'll handle it. Mom, please don't. Mom, Noah." I swallowed it all, bit my tongue, thought if I worked harder, was more helpful, they'd be grateful. Instead, they resented me. I walked to the sink, rinsed my hands, and looked out the window into the backyard. The swing set I bought for Noah last Christmas sat unused. He was inside most days now, glued to his tablet, barely noticing when I called him for snacks or stories. I dried my hands on the dish towel and turned back to her. "I didn't know you felt this way," I said. My voice sounded small but steady. "I thought I was doing something good, something kind." "You were," she said, her tone softening just slightly. "At first, but it's too much. We need space. Jake and I are struggling, and your being here, it's just making it harder." I nodded. That was all I could do, nod. Then I went to my room, the guest room, and closed the door. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I didn't cry either. I just lay in the bed I didn't pick, under a quilt I didn't make, in a house I used to own. Yes, used to own. This was the home John and I bought when Ellie was 4. It was smaller then. We built onto it over time, added a deck, remodeled the kitchen, planted that big maple tree out front that dropped golden leaves every fall. When Ellie got married and pregnant with Noah, they were living in a cramped apartment. Jake had just lost his job. They were drowning. I gave them the house, signed it over. It's yours now, I told her. For the baby, for your future. She cried and hugged me. I thought I was doing the right thing. But now I realized I'd given away more than a house. I'd given away my place in it. The next morning I woke up before anyone else. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm coffee and stared at the cabinets I once painted yellow. Then I went to my closet, pulled out a small fireproof box I'd kept hidden, and opened it. Inside was the deed. My name was still on it, in fine print, under a clause I insisted on when I signed it over. Lifelong right to reside. It was a tiny line, something they forgot, something I didn't. That morning I made a quiet decision. If I was no longer welcome here, then neither was the gift I gave. And some things, like dignity, aren't gifts, they're rights. And I was ready to reclaim mine, quietly, firmly, without asking, without begging, just like they taught me. The first time I stepped into that house, the one with the red shutters and the creaky porch swing, I was 27 years old and pregnant. John had just gotten a promotion at the plant, and we pooled every cent we had, his savings, my tips from waitressing, a loan from his uncle, to buy that little 2-bedroom bungalow at the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, just old siding and linoleum floors. But it was ours. We painted the nursery together. I planted lilies out front, and John built the swing with his bare hands. I remember how he stood back afterward, chest puffed, arms crossed, and said, "Someday we'll grow old here." He didn't make it to old. When the heart attack took him, it was sudden. No time for goodbye. Ellie was only 9. She didn't understand. For years she thought he'd just left. But I stayed. I made that house a home. I raised her in every corner of it, taught her how to read under the kitchen table, danced with her in the living room on snow days, cried quietly in the laundry room when the bills stacked too high. It wasn't just a house. It was memory. It was sacrifice. It was everything I built when the world gave me nothing but loss. So when Ellie and Jake were struggling in that cramped apartment, with the broken AC and the moldy ceiling, I offered them the only thing I had left that mattered. I offered them home. They moved in just before Noah was born. I remember helping them set up the nursery in what used to be Ellie's bedroom. She picked a soft gray paint. Jake didn't help much. He was always working late even then. A month later, I signed the deed over to Ellie. I sat in the lawyer's office, hand trembling as I inked my name beside hers. But I told myself it was the right thing. "For your future," I whispered to her. "This house should stay with you." With Noah, I insisted on one clause, the right to reside for life. It felt like a formality. I never thought I'd have to use it. Years passed. I stayed in my own little rented apartment a few blocks away. I saw them on weekends. I babysat. I cooked Sunday dinner. But after my fall, after the doctor said I'd need help for at least 6 weeks, Ellie said, "You should come stay with us. It'll be easier." I moved into the guest room with one suitcase and my fireproof box of documents. I didn't want to be a bother. I told myself it was temporary, just until I healed. But healing didn't come easy. Not with the way things felt inside that house. Jake hardly acknowledged me. He'd eat what I cooked, wear the clothes I laundered, let me pick Noah up from school, but he never thanked me. He didn't scold, didn't curse, but I felt it, the way he'd leave the room when I entered. The exaggerated sighs when I offered parenting advice. The sharp, quiet judgment in his glances. Ellie started changing too. At first it was subtle. "Mom, don't worry about that." "Mom, we've got it." Then came the corrections. "That's not how we do things here. Jake doesn't like when Noah gets too many snacks. Could you please ask before moving things in the kitchen?" I nodded. I swallowed it all. Then came the day with the neighbor. I was weeding the front yard. Those damn crabgrasses never stayed away, when a woman from 2 houses down strolled over. "Hi there," she said cheerily. "You must be the new housekeeper. Ellie's mom hired you, right? Gosh, she's lucky. My daughter would never spend money on help like that." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Ellie was on the porch. She heard it. I know she did. But she didn't say a word, didn't correct her, didn't say, "That's my mother." She just smiled politely and went back to scrolling on her phone. That night, I sat alone at the dinner table after they'd eaten early without me. The leftover lasagna I made was still warm, untouched. Noah was already in bed. I remembered every holiday I spent in that kitchen. Every Thanksgiving turkey I basted, every Christmas cookie we baked with sprinkles and laughter. Now I was just staff, silent, invisible. Later that week, Jake came home, tossed his keys on the counter, and looked at me like I was in the way. "You don't have to fold our laundry," he said. "It's not necessary." I looked up from the laundry basket. "I'm just trying to help." He didn't answer. I returned to folding. T-shirt, sock, silence. The next morning I overheard them talking in the hallway. "She's always here," Jake murmured. "It's like we don't have a life anymore." Ellie sighed. "I know, she means well, but she's everywhere. Cooking, cleaning, hovering over Noah. I'm sorry, Em, but this wasn't the plan." "I know," she whispered again. She didn't defend me. Not once. Not the way I defended her whole life. Not when the teachers said she talked too much. Not when the kids laughed at her for wearing hand-me-downs. Not when her high school boyfriend broke her heart. I stood by her no matter what. And now, when a neighbor mistook me for a maid, when her husband resented me for being kind, she said nothing. That was the moment it hit me. It wasn't Jake who started treating me like help. It was Ellie who let him. Ellie, my daughter, who let people forget who I was. Not a guest, not an employee, not a burden. A mother, a woman who built that house with her bare hands and broken back, who gave up sleep, comfort, and dreams to make someone else's life easier. But in this home, my home, I was no longer seen. That night, I closed the door to the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I didn't scream. I just stared at the walls and realized the house may be mine on paper, but I was no longer welcome in it. And the person who made that true wasn't Jake. It was my own daughter, the first one to forget. It was a Tuesday morning when I offered to take Noah to school. He'd been dragging his feet every morning, grumbling about the cold and the early wake-ups, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could help make his mornings easier. "I can drive him," I told Ellie over breakfast. "It's no trouble at all. I'm up early anyway." She didn't look up from her phone. "That's okay, Mom. We've got it. But if I take him, you and Jake could—" "Really? It's fine." Her voice was clipped now. Final. Jake walked in at that moment, dressed in his usual work shirt, tie a little crooked. I tried again. "Jake, I was saying I could drop Noah off just for a few days, give you both some space." He didn't even look at me, just said, "That's not necessary," and walked past me to the coffee machine. No thank you. No explanation, just a cold dismissal. I stood there, one hand holding a dish towel, feeling like I'd offered something shameful instead of help. That was the beginning of it. The quiet shutting out. First it was little things, like how they stopped telling me what time dinner was. I'd cook all afternoon, and by the time I came out with the roast or the casserole, the dining table would be empty, the dishes already rinsed. One night, I made pot pie from scratch. My husband used to love it, flaky crust, creamy filling, not too salty. I even made a little side of cranberry sauce for Noah. When I came out of the kitchen, the dining room was bare. The TV was on in the living room. Jake and Ellie were eating takeout on the couch. "I didn't know you'd already eaten," I said. "Oh," Ellie replied, not meeting my eyes. "We figured you were resting." I nodded, said nothing, carried the still warm pie back into the kitchen, and left it on the counter. Later that week, I knocked on Noah's bedroom door after dinner, holding a book we used to read together, Charlotte's Web, his favorite when he was 5. He didn't answer. I tried the doorknob, locked. I knocked again, softly. "Noah? Sweetheart, it's Grandma. I brought a book." I heard rustling, then his voice hesitant. "Dad said I should go to sleep early. I just wanted to say goodnight." Silence, then a muffled, awkward night. I stood outside his door for a few seconds longer, then walked back down the hall. The next morning, no one said good morning. Jake left for work without a word. Ellie came downstairs late, grabbed her coffee, and left her empty mug in the sink. They stopped asking if I needed anything. They stopped checking if I was okay. It was as if I'd become furniture, an outdated fixture no one knew where to store. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, that they were overwhelmed, that they didn't mean to be cruel. But the truth was, my presence was no longer welcome. I wasn't their mother. I was their problem. The house grew quieter, colder. I stopped cooking. They didn't notice. I stopped folding their laundry. No one thanked me. I stopped waiting up at night. No one came to say goodnight. And then came the night I heard them. It was past midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the kitchen to make tea. As I passed the hallway, I heard voices, low, tense. Jake's voice first, sharp, tired. "This isn't working," Ellie sighed. "She's trying. I think she means well." "I don't care if she means well. I can't breathe in this house, Em. Every corner I turn, she's there, watching, judging, rearranging everything. It's like we're living with a ghost who won't shut up. She's my mom. She's our problem." Silence. Then Jake again. "We need to do something. This isn't a retirement home." More silence. Then Ellie's voice, soft, almost defeated. "Maybe we should look into assisted living." "Somewhere close, somewhere nice," Jake scoffed. "Sure, if we can afford it. She doesn't even pay rent." I stood frozen in the hallway, one hand clutched to the stair rail, tea forgotten, assisted living. Somewhere nice, somewhere to send me. Like I was clutter, like I was trash, like I was something to be moved out of the way. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And that's when I realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't about healing or space or stress. They wanted me gone. Not just from the guest room, but from their lives. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. I walked back to my room, closed the door softly, sat on the bed, and I thought, so this is how it ends. Not with a fight, but with a whisper behind closed doors, and the quiet turning of a lock on a room that used to be mine. The morning after I overheard them whispering about assisted living, I woke before the sun rose. The house was still, cloaked in that strange quiet that only comes before dawn. I didn't make coffee. I didn't toast bread or warm up oatmeal for Noah like I usually did. I just packed, quietly, deliberately, one small suitcase, a few changes of clothes, my medication, my old Bible, a photo of John and me on the front porch back when the house still felt like home, and the fireproof box, the one they had forgotten even existed. Inside it was the deed, the one I signed over years ago in the name of love, but I'd had the foresight, or maybe just the instinct, to include a clause when I gave Ellie the house, conditional transfer of ownership. The condition? I had the legal right to live there for the rest of my life, and that right had been violated. I closed the box, zipped my bag, and left without a sound. The sun was just peeking over the rooftops when I reached the lawyer's office. I hadn't been there in years, but the receptionist remembered me. "Miss Gardner," she said gently, "what can we help you with today?" "I need to reverse a transfer of property," I said. "It was a conditional deed and I've been effectively evicted." The attorney reviewed the paperwork carefully. He read the original document, line by line. I watched his eyes pause where they always paused. Over that sentence I insisted on back when I signed it all away. She may reside in the home for the duration of her natural life unless she chooses to vacate willingly. I had not chosen to leave willingly. I had been pushed. "We can file a revocation," he said, setting down the papers. "It'll take some processing, but the clause is valid. Do you still have the original title?" I placed the document on the desk. "My daughter forgot, but I didn't," I said. He nodded. "You'll need to serve notice. It won't be easy." "I'm not trying to hurt her," I said, "but I won't let her forget who built that house." He didn't say anything more. Neither did I. An hour later, as I sat outside on a bench, my phone rang. "Ellie?" I almost didn't answer, but something in me needed to hear her voice one last time. "Mom," she said, already crying, "where are you? Jake said you just left, and the deed, the house deed, it's gone. Did you take it?" I paused, then answered simply, "Yes." Her voice broke. "Why? Why would you do that?" I closed my eyes, the wind soft on my face. "Because I don't have a home anymore," I said. "And I don't leave my name behind where I'm not welcome." "Mom, please. You don't understand. We were just overwhelmed. Jake didn't mean—" I cut her off gently. "Don't blame Jake, Ellie. This isn't about him. This is about you. You stood by while they locked doors, ate without me, spoke of me like a chore, and you said nothing." She didn't answer, so I finished. "I'm not angry. I'm just done." Silence, then a soft sob. "Are you coming back?" "No," I said. "Not now." She tried to say more, but I ended the call, not out of spite, out of peace. That afternoon I handed over the revocation papers to the county office. By law, Ellie would be served within the week. The house was no longer hers, not fully, and it never should have been. Not without memory, not without honor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse her name. I just let the law do what love no longer could, protect me. The cottage I found wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom home tucked between two sycamore trees on the outskirts of a quiet town. The kind of place where people still wave when they pass by and the postman knows your name. The rent was cheap, the neighbors polite, and the silence, it was the kind that wrapped around you like a quilt. I planted tomatoes in the backyard and rosemary by the window. I baked pies twice a week, peach on Wednesdays, apple on Sundays, and sold them at the farmer's market down on Main Street. The local hardware store let me put out a basket of crocheted dishcloths and hand lotion tins I made with lavender from my tiny garden. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, no one sighed when I walked into a room. No one told me what I should or shouldn't say. The walls didn't whisper against me. The doors didn't lock themselves behind me. I read in the mornings, wrote letters I never sent, sat in the rocking chair with a mug of tea, and watched squirrels dart across the fence like little thieves. I was alone, but I was not lonely. I thought often of John, how he'd built our old porch swing, how he used to sing badly in the shower, how he held Ellie the day she was born and cried like he was scared to break her. And I thought of Ellie, too, every day. I wondered if she regretted anything, if she even noticed the quiet weight of a missing mother. I missed Noah the most, his giggle, the way he used to wrap his arms around my neck when I picked him up from school, how he'd fall asleep on the couch with his head in my lap, his thumb still in his mouth. I'd written him a few letters but never sent them. What could I say? That I left? That I took back the house? That I couldn't stay somewhere I wasn't wanted? He wouldn't understand. He was just a child. But one night the phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Hello? There was silence on the line, then a quiet voice. Barely a whisper. Grandma? My heart jumped. Noah? Yeah, he said. It's me. I got your number from Mom's phone. She left it open. I sat down slowly, afraid that if I moved, the moment might vanish. I miss you, he said, voice trembling. Why did you leave? I closed my eyes. The lump in my throat rose fast. I had to go, sweetheart. She said you left because you're selfish, that you wanted the house back, that you didn't care about us. I felt the words like ice in my chest. She said I was selfish. Even after all of it, even after the dinners, the bedtime stories, the bills paid in silence, the sacrifices she never saw, even now, she couldn't tell him the truth. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Noah, I love you more than anything. I didn't leave because I don't care. I left because sometimes grown-ups, they forget how to be kind. And sometimes to stay kind, you have to walk away. He was quiet on the other end. Is that why you took the house? He asked. I smiled even though it hurt. I took back something that was mine. Yes, but not because of money. Because I needed to remember who I was. He sniffled. I don't believe what they said. I think they were mad, but I don't think you're selfish. Thank you, I whispered. That means more to me than you'll ever know. We talked for 10 more minutes, about school, about his new teacher, about a drawing he made of me and hung behind his bedroom door so no one would see it. I tell it goodnight every night, he said, like you used to do with me. And that nearly undid me. When we said goodbye, I sat for a long time in the dark, the phone still in my hand, the porch light flickering just outside the window. I had disappeared from their lives, but not from his heart. Still, the sting lingered. Even gone, I was being painted as the villain. Even gone, I was being blamed. But for once, I didn't fight back. I let the truth live in quiet places, in Noah's voice, in his drawing, behind a closed door, in a heart that still remembered who I really was. It was nearly 3 months after I left when I ran into Lorraine, my old neighbor, at the farmer's market. She spotted me at my booth just as I was arranging the last of the apple pies. Her gray curls were tighter than I remembered, and her eyes carried that familiar glint of gossip dressed up as concern. Well, if it isn't Martha Gardner, she said, pulling me into a firm hug before I could brace myself. Lord, I've been meaning to find you. I gave her a tight smile. Lorraine, you look well. She didn't waste time. I drove by your old house last week, grass up to my knees, looked like no one's mowed in a month. Didn't see your car, of course, but Martha, I have to ask, are you okay? I'm doing just fine, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. She leaned closer, dropping her voice to a whisper. Well, you didn't hear it from me, but things over there have fallen apart since you left. I didn't ask her to go on. She did, anyway. Jake got fired. Something about budget cuts, but I think it was more than that. Ellie's been coming apart at the seams. She pulled Noah out of soccer. Can't keep up with bills. That boy misses you, I can tell. He just stares out the car window when I see them at the store. And Ellie, well, she's looking thinner than a rake, eyes all sunken. I nodded. That's unfortunate. Lorraine touched my arm. You didn't deserve what happened. Everyone knows that. Did they, I wondered? Or did they only say so once the cracks began to show? I thanked her, sold 2 pies, and packed up early. I didn't know what I was feeling. Vindication? Sorrow? Guilt? But I knew I needed air. That evening, as I was watering the rosemary, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My cottage didn't get visitors. I froze, hose still in hand. As the car door opened, Ellie stepped out. She looked nothing like the woman who'd last spoken to me, with ice in her voice and fire in her eyes. Her blouse was wrinkled, her hair unwashed. She walked like her legs barely remembered how to hold her weight. She stood there for a long moment, clutching her purse with both hands. "Hi, Mom." I turned off the hose and set it down. She walked up the short path to my porch, but didn't come any closer. There was a quiet between us, full of years and miles and words unsaid. "I didn't know if you'd even talk to me," she said, voice shaking. "I've been driving around for an hour. Noah, he misses you." "I do too." I didn't answer. I came to say I'm sorry." Still, I said nothing. She stepped onto the porch, slowly, and dropped to her knees. I startled. "Ellie, get up." "No," she said, voice breaking. "I need to say this right. I need to say it so you hear me this time. I was wrong, Mom. I was cruel. I let Jake poison how I saw you. I let him convince me that you were the problem, when the truth was we were ungrateful. I was ungrateful. And I'm sorry." Tears fell from her chin onto the porch boards. I stood still, arms folded, heart cracking in places I didn't think could break again. "Mom," she whispered, "please. I miss you. I miss your cooking, your stories, just your presence in the house. It's not a home anymore. It's just walls. I thought I was making space for our marriage, but I was hollowing out the only place that ever had love in it." I took a breath, steady and deep. Then I said, "Are you sorry because I was hurt, or because I'm no longer around to give you what you lost?" Her head lifted. I continued, "Because the moment things turned hard, suddenly the mother you pushed away is valuable again? Is that it? Do I only matter now because the bills are stacking up, and Jake's gone silent, and the house feels cold?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, I swear, that's not it." I raised an eyebrow. "You let my grandson believe I left out of selfishness? You didn't correct him. You let him mourn me while you justified your comfort." She covered her face with both hands. I looked at her, this grown woman I had once held in my arms, once tucked into bed with lullabies, once shielded from a world that never gave me half the love I gave her, and still, I wasn't angry, just clear. "I'm not coming back, Ellie," I said softly. Her shoulders trembled. "I know. I'm not reopening that door. I closed it for a reason. You don't get to knock now just because life taught you a lesson." "I know," she whispered again. "But I had to try." "You did more than try," I said. "You showed up. That matters. Not for me, but for Noah." She looked up. "Can he come visit?" "Yes," I said. "Any time." I stepped forward then, helped her to her feet, handed her a tissue from my apron pocket, wiped a bit of dirt from her cheek like I used to do when she was little. Old habits don't die, they sleep. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just can't pretend you didn't break something sacred." She nodded, tears still falling. "I'll make it right," she promised. "I hope you do," I said. "But not for me, for him." She nodded again. "For him." She walked back to her car, slower now, like the weight she carried had a name. Regret. As the engine turned over, I turned back to my herbs, my pies, my quiet. Because sometimes truth doesn't arrive with a bang. Sometimes it pulls into your driveway, kneels on your porch, and whispers, "I'm sorry," too late for things to be what they were, but just in time for them to be something new. The letters started small, folded sheets of cream paper tucked into colorful envelopes I found at a thrift store. I'd write about my garden, the new kittens born under my porch, the smell of cinnamon when I baked on rainy afternoons. Each letter ended the same way. I love you, Noah, always. He wrote back once a week. He told me about his new math teacher, the kids at recess, the time he won a small prize in a spelling contest and wished I had been there to see it. He never once mentioned Jake. He did, however, start drawing pictures again. In one letter, he sent a sketch of my old kitchen. Before it went quiet, he wrote in his 8-year-old scrawl. He had drawn me standing by the stove, wearing my apron, spoon in hand. Noah was in the background, smiling. Jake and Ellie were nowhere to be seen. I cried that night, quietly, into my pillow. Not from sorrow, from the strange, aching gratitude of still being remembered for something good. I sent him puzzles, paperbacks, the same brand of hot chocolate we used to drink together, anything to keep the thread between us strong. As for Ellie, she called once every 2 weeks, like clockwork. The conversations were careful, cautious, but not cold. I just wanted to hear your voice, she'd say. I always let her talk, told her how Noah was doing from the letters, shared small details of my days. She rarely spoke of Jake anymore. Their marriage, I sensed, was a shadow of what it had been. Maybe it always had been. But one call, in early spring, was different. She cleared her throat and said, "Mom, can we talk about the house?" I stayed quiet. She continued, "I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve anything. But Noah, he misses that home. And we're struggling. We can't afford rent elsewhere. I was wondering if you'd consider signing it back over." I let the silence stretch. Then I said simply, "No." She didn't argue. She just whispered, "Okay," and I heard her swallow back tears. "I gave you that house once," I said gently, "and when I did, it was out of love. But love without gratitude becomes expectation. That house stopped being a home the moment you treated me like I didn't belong in it." "I know," she said. "I've thought about that every day." "I don't say this to punish you, Ellie," I said, "but I need you to understand. Property doesn't teach character. You have to earn that lesson, the hard way. And that's okay." "So, it's final?" "Yes," I said. "But that doesn't mean I don't forgive you." She let out a breath, as if she'd been holding it for months. "Thank you, Mom." "I forgive you," I said again, "but forgiveness is not a return ticket. I won't go back to being the woman who disappears for everyone else's comfort. I'm not angry anymore, but I've found peace, and I can't trade it again, not even for you." "I understand," she whispered, "and I really am sorry." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing something else." She was confused. "What do you mean?" But I didn't tell her everything. What I meant was, I had quietly reached out to an old friend of mine from church, who now worked at a staffing agency in the city. I'd sent Ellie's old resume and explained the situation, without bitterness, just truth. Within a week, she had an interview. Within 2, she had a job. Nothing glamorous, just a stable position at a local nonprofit. Good hours, decent benefits. Enough to get her back on her feet. I never told her I had a hand in it, and she never asked. Sometimes, help doesn't need credit. Sometimes, it just needs to be done with clean hands and no need for applause. The more time passed, the more I saw Noah return to himself. His letters became longer, more joyful. He sent pictures of birds he spotted, of a tomato he tried to grow in a cup, of a cardboard oven he built to cook like Grandma. Ellie, too, changed. She started sending small notes of her own, never asking for anything, just sharing memories. A Christmas ornament I made when she was 6, a song I used to hum, a recipe she finally got right. I knew she was trying. I knew she was working through guilt, through shame, through the long shadows of mistakes made in love's name. And I let her, but I never invited her back. Some wounds close. Others stay tender even after healing. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And love, real love, doesn't always mean letting someone return to the place they broke. Sometimes, love is letting them live with the consequence and grow from it. As for me, I tended my garden, mailed my letters, sang to the kittens, and lit a candle each night for every version of myself I had ever been. The daughter, the wife, the mother, the forgotten, and now the woman who remembered who she was, even when no one else did. It became official on a Monday. The paperwork had gone through weeks before, but it wasn't until I held the envelope in my hands, crisp white, with my full name printed at the top, that the weight of it settled in my chest. The house was mine again, legally, undeniably, unapologetically. I stood in my kitchen, now painted soft yellow, with a blueberry pie cooling on the counter and 2 cats circling my ankles, and whispered to myself, "You're home." But I didn't move back. That chapter had closed. Instead, I listed the house for rent, but not to just anyone. I found a single mother with 2 children, recently evicted after her ex-husband stopped paying support. She worked long hours at a grocery store and still managed to get her kids to school each morning with clean clothes and lunchboxes. I met her at the local library. We talked over coffee. She cried when I handed her the keys. "You don't know what this means," she whispered. "I do," I said. I offered it to her for next to nothing, just enough to cover taxes and maintenance. She tried to argue, but I waved her off. "Everyone deserves a soft place to land," I told her. "This house has held sorrow before, but it can hold healing too." That fall, I turned my cottage kitchen into a small business. My online pie orders grew slowly at first, then steadily. People liked the handwritten thank you notes I slipped into each box. Some even wrote back. I kept a binder of their letters beside my journal. At night, I wrote chapters of my story, not for the world, not for revenge, just for the record. Just so someone would know that I lived. I hurt, I healed, and I remembered. When my 70th birthday rolled around, I didn't expect much. A quiet dinner, maybe, tea in solitude. But that morning, tucked between the usual bills and grocery flyers, was a pale blue envelope with shaky handwriting on the front. Noah. I opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No drawings this time, just a few sentences, written in the careful hand of a boy who'd grown up just enough to mean every word. "Dear Grandma, happy birthday. Mom said I could write you alone this time. I don't need presents or cookies. I just want you to know something. You are home. Not the house, not the street. You. I hope one day I get to live with you, because when I'm with you, everything makes sense. Love, Noah." I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears fall, not out of grief, but out of grace. I didn't need a mansion. I didn't need to be adored. I just needed to be known. And for the first time in a long, long while, I was, by the only heart that mattered. I sat at the window that evening, the sun dipping behind the trees, casting gold across the porch. My rosemary bush swayed gently in the breeze. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime sang. The house I had given, reclaimed, and released now held new laughter, a new family, a new beginning. And I had myself, my name, my home, my peace. If you've ever been made to feel like a burden, if you've given your whole life, your time, your hands, your heart, only to be turned away by those you loved most, let Grandma True Stories speak for you. These are the stories not everyone dares to tell, but everyone needs to hear. Subscribe to the channel today, because when a grandmother finally speaks, no one has the right to ignore her.